Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 333 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and we've got great news. The great news is that Germany is now saying it would not block Poland from sending tanks to Ukraine. Here is a quote from Germany's foreign minister, and he says that Germany would not stand in the way if Poland sends Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Now, on my channel for the last week, there's been a lot of confusion about whether or not Germany would allow the transfer of Leopard tanks from other NATO countries to Ukraine. This article from Al Jazeera is dated from yesterday, January 22nd. So in English-sourced language media, there's still been confusion about this topic up until yesterday. Even yesterday, here's a tweet from the Polish Prime Minister. "We will not stand by idly and watch Ukraine bleed to death. If we don't get German agreements on the Leopards, we will build a smaller coalition of countries ready to donate some of their modern tanks to a fighting Ukraine." This tweet is from yesterday at 4 a.m. my time. So hopefully something has shifted, something has changed, and we have an official position from the German government. And I think the confusion is I can't find a quote from German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. I can find a quote from the Vice Chancellor, the Foreign Minister, and now the Defense Minister. But in English source language media, I still can't find a statement from German Chancellor Olaf Scholz saying he's okay with other countries transferring Leopard tanks to Ukraine. So that might be where the confusion is coming in. And in the last couple videos, my apologies to my German subscribers. People maybe are being a little harsh towards your country, but there's been lots of conspiratorial comments such as these. I want to read this one. "There has still been no official contact of the Polish government to the German government regarding the transfer of tanks to Ukraine. As long as that has not happened, I consider this whole thing to be a propaganda exercise by the Polish government." And this is not a legitimate excuse. Saying, "Where is the paperwork? We can't officially be blocking you unless you officially do the paperwork." Now, the cliche, the joke here in America is that Germany really loves paperwork and bureaucracy, but this is not a valid argument. I would not waste my time going to the grocery store in the middle of the night if I knew the store was closed. Likewise, no one's going to fill out the paperwork if they know the answer is going to be no. So other countries, Denmark, Finland, Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, they've been trying to get verbal consent, verbal agreement from Germany before they fill out the paperwork. Obviously, they were not getting that for the last couple weeks, but hopefully we're all there now. We're on the same page. And I think people's emotions are involved, which is why some of these comments are getting so harsh towards democratic allies. But the West's indecision is killing our people, says Ukraine. Potentially every day as this war goes on, another 100 or so Ukrainian defenders are losing their lives. So to wait for the paperwork, to wait for bureaucracy, to move at the speed of bureaucracy, this is costing Ukrainian lives. Just something that we all remember in the comments section. But Germany's defense minister is saying that he is reviewing a list of 19 Leopard tanks that might be sent to Ukraine. A decision on this hasn't been made. Whether or not Germany sends tanks from their own personal inventory, that's of a secondary issue. If they send them, great. If they don't want to send them, that's fine as well. I do acknowledge that this is a very divisive issue inside of Germany. To everyone inside Germany who marched and protested and contacted their representatives, I thank you, Ukraine thanks you. It did make a difference, I believe, in the public debate that we've had the last week. And if you're not tracking what is the opinion of the average German about transferring tanks, here is a poll that I found on Twitter. Do you support Germany transferring Leopard tanks to Ukraine? 46% saying yes, 43% saying no, 11% undecided. So inside Germany, I respect the democratic process. This is a very divisive issue. They have to have this debate amongst themselves whether or not they want to send their own tanks from their own inventory. It's their decision to make. But it has to be the Leopards. And I've tried making this argument in previous videos, but here's a pie chart illustrating why it needs to be German-made Leopards. And when you look at European inventories of main battle tanks, there's just a lot of them. There's over 2,000 of them. And if other countries try to piecemeal send 10 here, 5 there, whatever, that's not as beneficial to Ukraine. If Ukrainian soldiers can be trained in mass on one tank system, as far as maintenance, supplies, training, it'll just be more effective on the battlefield if they can get a consistent number of a single main battle tank. So the Leopard was just the most obvious choice. And to anyone in the comments section saying, what about the United States? What about America not sending Abrams tanks? I just want to caution you that whataboutism is a form of Russian disinformation. Yeah, you can ask the question, why is America not sending Abrams tanks? But that's not an excuse for Germany not sending their own tanks or blocking the transfer of tanks from other countries. You could go ahead and assume that America is neutral. America wants nothing to do with this land war in Europe. What would Germany's actions be then? Shouldn't Germany be able to make their own decisions and be a leader on the continent? What about America not sending Abrams is not a valid reply to Germany's decision to send Leopard tanks. And I did also try and make the argument why the Abrams tank is not a good fit for the Ukrainians, given that there's just way more maintenance and training facilities for the Leopards around Europe. But let's go ahead and say that America is being selfish. I'm an American veteran. We have thousands of these Abrams tanks in our inventory. Easily, we could donate several hundred to the Ukrainians. Why is the United States not choosing to do this, even if there would be logistical challenges? And this might be a reason. Since 1988, every Abrams tank that we've built, it has depleted uranium armor in its plating. So this is a depleted uranium mesh between the steel and ceramic armor plates. And this is super secret stuff. We have lots of secret and top secret technology and information, software, and plating in our Abrams tank. And we don't want this being captured and then dissected by the Russians. So the tanks, the Abrams tanks that the United States has sent to Australia, Iraq, Kuwait, Morocco, and Saudi Arabia, it doesn't have this secret depleted uranium mesh. It uses tungsten instead. So even the factory workers that assemble the Abrams tank, they don't get to see this depleted uranium mesh that we put in our armor in our tanks. Why does the United States put depleted uranium in our armor? And first of all, this isn't the radioactive isotope of uranium. This is not hazardous for anyone standing next to the tank. Uranium is just the heaviest, most dense, naturally occurring element on the periodic table of elements, and militaries have started using bullets and projectiles with uranium casing in order to pierce any armor. So if rounds and bullets are being made out of uranium now, then the United States military thinks it needs to build its tanks out of uranium to withstand those projectiles. This is just what the United States does. I apologize, but they don't want one of these Abrams tanks being captured and then sent back to Moscow. Is this a selfish reason? Yes. Should the Leopards be used instead? Yes, for numerous other reasons other than this, but this is where we are. So what can the United States do instead? And I've shown this graphic of where is military aid to Ukraine coming from, And the United States has so far provided more military aid than every other country combined by a factor of 3. Now, as an American, I'm happy to be doing this, but this doesn't tell the whole story. I don't want to discount all of our allies, because when you factor in humanitarian aid and financial aid, EU institutions have supplied Ukraine with twice as much financial assistance as the United States. Ukraine needs both guns and butter. The United States has plenty of guns. So if the EU can supply more financial assistance, all of this is doing great work to help defeat the Russians. Additionally, if you look at bilateral aid to Ukraine as a percentage of a country's GDP, so factor in the size of the country, the United States is just a huge country, nobody has done more for Ukraine than the Baltic states. Estonia, Latvia, Poland, Lithuania, Norway, the United Kingdom, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, even Canada, as a percentage of their GDP, has done more for Ukraine than the United States. So it's a team effort, team democracy. We're all on the same team. Everyone needs to work together and do what they can to help defeat Russia. There's also the issue of refugees being allowed into countries. Poland has taken in 1.5 million Ukrainian refugees. Germany has taken in over 1 million. That's incredible. Czech Republic, 478,000. The United States, 221,000. It's a great feeling knowing that Western democracies around the world are doing everything they can to protect Western democracy from Russian fascism, from Russian aggression. So let's check in with the Russians and see how they're doing. And according to this report from Norway, Russia has taken over 180,000 casualties. This is dead and wounded fighting in Ukraine. So Russian losses are beginning to approach about 180,000 dead or wounded, according to Norwegian Chief of Defense Erik Kristoffersen, he said on a local TV interview. And the Norwegians aren't known to lie or embellish, so I'm believing this number, that the amount of Russian casualties experienced is close to 180,000. He also says that Ukrainian losses are probably over 100,000 dead or wounded. In addition, Ukraine has about 30,000 civilians who have died in this terrible war. I think this number is much higher. We don't have real reporting from cities like Mariupol, how many civilians were taken back to Russia and how many civilians were killed. Moscow and Kyiv have not provided reliable accounts for their losses for months. And in November, U.S. Army Chief of Staff Mark Milley also said that the Russian army had suffered more than 100,000 dead or wounded. So more than likely, somewhere in the Kremlin, this information is known, how many Russian soldiers have died fighting in Ukraine, and maybe this information has been leaked to Western intelligence. But these numbers are astonishing. How many Soviet troops were killed in Afghanistan over a decade of fighting, and it was only 15,000. So if Russia has experienced over 180,000 casualties, this is their most deadly war, most deadly conflict since World War II. They've not experienced this level of loss and defeat on the battlefield in almost 80 years. And I think this number might actually be much higher. Here is an intercepted phone call from Ukrainian intelligence. They intercept hundreds, if not thousands, of these calls a day. And here is a Moldovan man saying that the newly formed mobilized unit from this province already has 30 casualties even before reaching Ukrainian territory. And this is due to drunken fights, overdoses, and frostbite.
Говорят, что там те, кто сидит сейчас в Ульяновске, что уже точно в январе они едут менять у нас. Это уже точно. И в Ульяновске уже у нас здесь мы, Мордва, наш полк, у нас Ну, как, ладно, 300 есть, ну и 2 200, что ли, вроде бы. Но в Ульяновске уже они не были нигде, ни в Украине, нигде. У них 30 300-х.
Охренеть, где? Как?
Это пьянки. Кто замерз от передоза, от всего. Ну, драки там по пьяни. Ну,
Вы в Украине, нахуй, нет, что нихуя. Они в Ульяновске, в России сидят, и то 300-е.
Я и говорю, они это, приедут сюда работать.
А что будет происходить, если они туда приедут, где вы сейчас вы находитесь? Они друг друга переубивают, что ли?
Вчера эти дострелялись, первая рота наша. Гранат кидали просто, ну, по пьяни. Да прикалывались. 16 штук прилетел туда. Ну, они взяли поход своей позиции. И туда прилетело.
Да.
The Russian military has the organizational ability and self-discipline of a biker gang. It's absolutely absurd. So when we check in with the war map on deepstatemap.live, this more or less is what it's looked like for the last couple months. Since the Russians lost the city of Kherson, yeah, the Wagner mercenaries have been pushing in the Donbass region, but the front line is more or less static. Everyone 2 months ago was expecting the Ukrainians to have a winter counteroffensive, maybe in the Luhansk region, maybe towards the direction of Melitopol. But US officials are advising Ukraine to wait on an offensive. So senior US officials are advising Ukraine to hold off on launching a major offensive against Russian forces until the latest supply of US weaponry is in place and training has been provided. So every month in Germany, about 500 Ukrainian soldiers are being trained on the M2 Bradley. And the M2 Bradleys are on their way. The first security assistance package this year, I think 50 were going to be delivered, and then the package last week, another 59, bringing the total to over 100. So these infantry fighting vehicles are going to be excellent for assaulting Russian trench positions. So yeah, I would argue that it is in Ukraine's best interest to perhaps wait a couple more weeks or a couple more months until they get these Bradleys and these potentially Leopard tanks from the Western countries. With the loss of Soledar, Ukrainian positions in Bakhmut might be jeopardized, and this is a serious possibility. With the Wagner mercenaries pushing past the mining town of Soledar, they're trying to swing around from the north and cut off this road to Bakhmut. They're also pushing from the south, and if they can capture this road coming from the west, then the Ukrainian forces in the town of Bakhmut won't be able to be resupplied. At that point, it is, in my opinion, the best interest of the Ukrainian forces to withdraw from the city. So there is a possibility in the coming weeks or coming months that Russia might finally take the city of Bakhmut. They've been trying to take this basically since 2014. Yes, this would be a huge propaganda victory for Russian media, but once Ukraine has all the heavy armor and equipment they need to go on proper offensives, they can retake the town. And to put this area of the map in perspective, you need to zoom out and just think about the actual square kilometers that Russia has successfully advanced in the last 6 months. So this tiny little green area right here, that's Soledar, that's Bakhmut. And this is the amount of territory that the Russian forces have successfully taken in the last 6 months. Now they've lost a lot of territory in the Kharkiv region, they've lost a lot of territory in the Kherson region, but here are their gains. How many tens of thousands of soldiers have they lost in the last 6 months? And as far as forward progression, how much have they actually gained? And it's not a lot. Here's a quick story I have to share with you just to highlight Russian absurdity. This man right here is Alexei Milchikov, and he is a Wagner mercenary. And he's also a Russian neo-Nazi. And RT News caught up with him in the Donbass region and wanted to highlight this hero of Russia. And here is the minute clip from RT News of them talking to this neo-Nazi.
А как ты относишься к украинцам, к противникам?
Ну, для начала я считаю, что как нации украинцев не существует, что это оболваненные русские, которые себя воспринимают по-другому. К противнику отношусь. Я считаю, что противник должен быть уничтожен, потому что только мертвые в спину не стреляют. И мертвые не сделают детей, которые потом не возьмут оружие и не начнут мстить за родителей.
Но ты говоришь о противнике или обо всем украинском народе?
Украинский народ, я же объясняю, это оболваненный народ, но который много лет уже вкладывает, что они отдельная нация, то есть должна быть полноценная деукраинизация, потому что с этнической точки зрения мы ничем не отличаемся. Отличия вот эти разные последние 100 лет.
Я нацист. Я нацист. Я не буду углубляться. Националист, там, патриот, имперское направление и так далее. Я прямо говорю, я нацист.
So next, the media put juxtaposed this clip from RT News interviewing this guy and then other interviews that this Russian neo-Nazi has given saying that he's a Nazi. Final couple feel-good clips I have for you. The first one is of a Ukrainian defender and his daughter. Super cute. Final clip I have for you is of Ukrainian soldiers recovering from their wounds. They're looking strong. That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support my channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.